Hey, what's up everyone? Tim here from Everyday Tactical Vids. As you saw from the title of this video, we're going to be talking about my top 5 survival knives or survival tools, depending on how you define a knife. Some people say a knife is up to a certain size, and beyond that it becomes a different type of cutting tool. Bottom line, these are my top 5 survival knives or survival choppers or machetes, however you want to define it. Number 5 for me is the SE6. Great knife, lots of different options as far as the colorations. I do have this one with the black and the gray handles. I also have the one in Venom Green with the orange handles. Just a great overall knife. One thing I found is that I want a knife that's probably 6 inches or bigger. I don't want something that is 5 inches. A lot of people, that's kind of the cutoff for survival knives, but I tend to want something a little bit larger. So $10.95 for your steel. It's easy. It's a good steel because it's easy to sharpen out in the woods, but it's going to hold an edge quite well. 11.75 inches from end to end. Your blade length is 6.5 inches and your actual cutting edge is 5.75 inches. We do have a drop point blade here, full flat grind as far as your grind, and then linen micarta is the material for the handles. Your Rockwell hardness is between 55 and 57, and it does have a powder coating on the blade. Your weight is 12 ounces and your thickness is 0.188 inches. The thing I love about this is that it gives me enough length to baton through something. It gives me enough weight and length also to chop like this, but also if I want to choke my fingers back and run my wrist through this lanyard like so, now I can chop like this as well. The jimping is just right for this, so I can rest my thumb on that and it's not going to beat my thumb up too much, but also it does give me some additional grip with the knife. Another thing for me about this knife is the handle. It's relatively neutral, not all kinds of grooves and cutouts. It's also the right thickness. Sometimes for me with a knife, when I grab a hold of it, if it's thick, I'm gripping it really hard to make sure that I've got good control and it's just beating up my hand. This one, as soon as I grab it, it just feels really comfortable in my hand. Now the SE6 comes with a pretty nice sheath from SE, but I had a custom one made by Black Bear Custom Kydex. So you can see that there, it's got that very cool pattern. And then I've got a fire steel on the side. This is from Pine Fire, a company that used to exist back in the day, but they since closed down. And then you have your loop on the back with your very cool Black Bear Custom Kydex logo there. So the SE6, great knife. You know, if I had none of these other knives and this was the one that I had to use for a survival scenario, I'd be really happy with it. So yeah, number 5 out of my top 5, it's the SE6. Our next knife is this, which is the Bravo 4. Now, if you go online, you can find this over at Red Beard Blades. That's his newer website. His former website and name for his company was J. Wolf Cutlery. Now, the story behind this is I originally saw this knife reviewed by Aaron over at Gideon's Tactical, and I was intrigued by it, so I reached out to them and they made one for me. These are custom knives, really beautifully built. The story is that the gentleman who built them, he was in the military, served overseas, was a sniper, and just saw a lot of knives being broken on a regular basis. So he said, I'm gonna make a knife that my buddies and I can't break. It's gonna be a really strong knife for real use in, you know, wartime scenarios. So he built this one. It's CPM 3V, and this thing is super stout and super strong. In my review, which I'll put a link to that down below as well, I really beat on this thing. I mean, I really tried to hurt this knife and I had no issues whatsoever. This thing is very comfortable to use, and it's got the thickness of like a BK2, but feels much more sleek and manageable. Some details on the knife: 10 inches from end to end, 5 inches for the blade, 5 inches for the handle. A lot of different options for your steels and your handle types. The thickness, you can go 1/4 inch or 5/16. This is 1/4 inch thick. I have CPM 3V. You can get it in S35 VN as well. One of the cool things about this is that he tapers the handle. You can probably see it's thicker here, like wider here, and then it tapers back. And that's how it naturally falls, like in your hand. You have basically more kind of meat on this portion of your hand as opposed to back at the end. And so really comfortable to hold on to this thing. No jimping, but because it's wide up there, you know, 1/4 inch thick, you can place your hand on that and really do some nice push cuts as well. I did put a lanyard on this. I took it off for now, but if you choke back with the lanyard, it has enough weight that you can chop with it and really you can get some work done. So my first survival knife ever was a BK2, which I liked for a while, but I just found it too clunky. And so when I heard about this knife and heard it's 1/4 inch thick, I was like, it feels a little shady to me. But like I said, it's just super manageable. This one has a saber grind. They give you a bunch of different options as far as the grind. just a really strong knife. Like I said, I really aggressively used this thing and I wasn't able, I mean, I scratched it up throwing sparks off the fire steel and stuff, but you know, no issues whatsoever. Now, I had a couple different sheaths for this knife. I have a leather one and I also have this Kydex one. This one was built by Country Prepper, and you can see I've got the fire steel there, Kydex, and then on the back I've got like a little tin there so you can put, you know, fire starter or other items that you want, and then we have your leather loop there to attach it to your belt. Now, price point for the knife, not including the sheath, you're going to be looking at between $250 and up from there, depending on, you know, what different types of steels you use and different things like that. He doesn't have a ton of different knives, but the ones that he's made, everybody I know who's used them has been very, very impressed. Once again, that's the B4 or Bravo 4 from Redbeard Blades. Now we're getting into some of the bigger options that I have here. Number 3 is this, which is the LT Wright Overland Machete. A couple different options here. You can get a leather sheath or you can get a Kydex sheath. And you can also get something similar to like the Rocky Mountain tread. It's very textured for the handle. I got the smooth one, and that's in a canvas micarta. 19 inches from end to end. You have a 12-inch blade, 3/32 for your thickness, 1075 is your steel. It does have a convex edge on it. They do a 2-step patina. You can see that this thing is definitely, it's seen some use. I do have the leather sheath here. I'll show you that in a minute. The cool thing about the Kydex sheath is that it slides in like this, and then the top of the Kydex sheath is open, so you can actually use this 90-degree spine to do some scraping, you know, with a cover here basically, so you're not going to cut yourself as you're scraping on like a branch or a tree or something like that. Now, I said earlier that one of the things that's important to me is to be able to chop. So if I'm chopping branches, say hemlock branches, because that's going to be something I'm going to lay on at night, using a little dinky knife, it's possible, it's just hard to do. So being able to slice, you know, and really swing and slice through a branch is nice to have something like this. The other thing about this is that because it's a machete, it's going to have a little bit of flex as well, so it's less likely that you're going to snap it because, you know, it's made to have a little bit of bend. The other thing is that while this isn't going to function exactly like an axe or a hatchet or something like that, certainly you're going to have more power coming in with that hatchet or that axe. But the cool thing about this is, you know, with an axe, as far as your blade, let's say you've got about this much of a cutting edge. Whereas with this, you got a little bit more freedom to, you know, when you're swinging at a piece of wood, if you miss it with an axe, you only get this much because you didn't accurately hit the wood. It's just going to take more work. Whereas with this, you know, you're swinging and chopping at a tree, you've got a lot of blade that can cut into that wood. It does have a bungee here on the end. You can run that a bunch of different ways or use it a bunch of different ways. It also functions to lock it into the Kydex and also into the leather sheath as well. One trick that they showed me at Blade Show, which is that you can actually slide the bungee up on your arm, and now you've got control here if you're doing some finer cutting or like this with the machete. I've not used the other style of handle. What I can tell you for this is that it is very comfortable in hand, and you can do a lot of chopping without, you know, having your hand get beat up at all. Here's a look at your leather sheath. I believe it's JRE Industries is the name of the company that builds these sheaths. Really nice. You got the double loop here on the back, and then you can see the bungee goes around this little hook so that when you're carrying it, it doesn't come sliding out. Now, for most people, when they think of a machete, they think of being in the jungle. And I get that, you know, living in the northeast of the United States, where there's a mix of softwoods like birch and pine, and then hardwoods with like things like oak and maple. A machete is not going to cut through those hardwoods as effectively, but particularly for where I'm located and in this real survival scenario, I'm probably not going to be cutting a lot of hardwoods. I'm like, let me chop some branches of hemlock, pine, things like that, in order to make a shelter, whatever it might be. So yeah, I love this thing. Just like really, really solid product. Price point for this is like $115, and then with a sheath, I think the Kydex sheath is $155, a little bit more if you get the leather sheath, but very reasonably priced for an LT Wright product like this. And the Overland machete is definitely a winner in my book. Choosing my favorite survival knife out of all these items was really challenging to do. These top two were in close competition all the way to the end. This one comes in number 2, but it could have been number 1. It's a great product. It's the Tops Bushcraft Kukri 7.0. Now I want to give a shout out to, I believe his name is Funky Prepper, where he was talking about this knife and in particular the idea of the angle of the blade. Now you may know that a Kukri has to be made in a particular area. Can't remember if it's in Nepal or India, but this is why they call this a Kukri knife. It's not exactly a Kukri because it's not made in that particular location, but this is Top's spin on a Kukri style knife. Now what Funky Prepper said was that when you're chopping and you hit the piece of wood because of the angle of your hand, if this was a straight edge, your hand would be more straight out like this, as opposed to with the Kukri, your hand can be at a comfortable angle, and the blade is going to hit the wood and chop effectively. So that makes a difference when you think about just how you're going to feel after a bunch of chopping, and this thing definitely does the job. So you get that black coating for the blade, then you've got the gray handles, you've got some nice red liners there. I did put a lanyard on this one. It's 14 inches from end to end, 7.25 inches for your blade. Your blade thickness is 0.25 inches, and it is in 1095 high carbon steel. Now it's a little bit heftier, 22.2 ounces. And for me, that's a win because, again, I need something that's going to chop, and I can use, I don't have to use a ton of energy to be chopping with a tiny little knife that has no weight, and therefore putting a lot of muscle into it. With a little more heft in a cutting tool, now I can swing this thing with less force, and it's still going to get the job done. Now they call this black linen micarta handles. I would call it more gray linen micarta, but we also have the bow drill divot on both sides as well. Now I put a video together a while ago with this and the ballistic nylon sheath that it came with, and I built a survival kit and kind of went through a survival scenario of, you got a couple hours before the sun comes down, can you get a fire and a shelter put together? And this thing was great, and I've used it since, obviously, as you can tell. And this is an awesome item. Now the 22.2 ounces is going to be a bit much for some people to bring it into the woods on a regular basis, but I don't mind having some extra weight with me in a pack. You know, if I'm going out backpacking or even just day hiking, I want to make sure I got the gear that I really want with me, and so I tend to put a little bit more emphasis on the weight of the knife. I don't mind, and then maybe I'll have lighter items for some of the other items that I'm carrying. Now the sheath that comes with this is fine, but I had a custom sheath made by Black Bear Custom Kydex, and it's this one right here. So you can see I've got the Kukri, and I've got the Tops Puko here. I've got an Exotech, this is the Nano Striker XL, and then I have the Streamlight Micro Stream there. It's in this very cool Cryptek with some brown on the back, and then we have a loop here, again with the Black Bear Custom Kydex logo for carrying it. Great system for this. Certainly you could just throw this into a backpack as well. But number 2, I like this one a lot. It's the Tops Bushcraft Kukri Knife 7.0. All right, my number 1 survival knife is this right here. It's the SC Humless. I love this knife. I got this a while ago and went right out into the woods to test it out in a survival scenario. I took this and then like an SOL survival kit. And I had heard good things about the SC Humless. It had been out for years when I got one, and I was like, this is why so many people like them so much. So I got it with the, basically the tan handles, are a little bit gray, but I would call it tan handles, and the tan blade. They do have a really cool one with an orange handle and then a OD blade. Looks a little bit forest green to me. There's the orange handle with lime green. There's gray with black. I mean, there's a lot of different options out there. Your price point for this one's going to run you probably $150 and up to close to $200, depending on the one you get. I believe the one with the orange handles and the venom green, it's G10 handles instead of micarta, and that one's closer to 200 bucks. Your end-to-end length is 16.5 inches. Your actual cutting edge is 9.75 inches. Your blade length is 10.38 inches. Your blade width from the top all the way down to the bottom of the edge here is 2 inches, and it's 0.188 inches thick. 1095 high carbon steel for your steel. Again, something that's easy to sharpen up out in the field compared to some other higher end steels, but it's going to keep an edge for a pretty long time. Its weight is 23 ounces. Your Rockwell hardness is 55 to 57. It does have that powder coating on this blade as well, similar to the SE6. It does have micarta handles here, as you can see. We do have what they call a hammering pommel. I rarely use a pommel in that way, but you can. As you can see, I do have a lanyard loop on this thing. So the thing I loved about this knife the first time I used it was that you could really hack with it, but you can also do some of that more, not really fine work, but definitely finer work. You could loosen this up a little bit if you wanted to run your hand through it, but you can also have it a little bit smaller, and then you can run your hand like so. And that allowed me to basically do this kind of grip for chopping, which would give me even more leverage because I got my hand choked down so far on the handle. You can see, I mean, I've definitely used this thing. I actually even have a little bit of rust in some of the bolts there. But I used this thing, you know, once I got out in the woods and I was like, whoa, I really like this thing. And then the more and more I used it, the more and more I liked it. Control when I'm really hacking because of how comfortably it fits in hand, but also the way it falls into my hand. I'm able to, I can do feather sticks with this. I can lock this in and pull feather sticks against it. You know, I'm not going to be carving bowls, but again, in a real life survival scenario, that's not the goal. It's to stay alive. And so this gives me the ability to chop and also do some smaller tasks as well. Essie stands behind their products. You know, everything they make, they're going to stand behind it. And that's true for all these companies. So LT Wright, Redbeard Blades, Tops, and Essie, they all stand behind their products. When you go to like Blade Show or you go to SHOT Show, you'll see Essie products that have been destroyed, and they have like a display there, and they say, you know, like, we stand behind our products for the life of them. And they have busted ones that they have, you know, hey, you broke that knife, we're going to send you a new one because you found some way to break an Essie knife. So I love that about the company, and they're solid people over there. I know Shane pretty well. Gotten to know him over the years. Really solid dude. Does a great job with the company. Once again, this comes with a sheath that's fine. It's a very durable plastic, but I got a custom sheath made, again, from Black Bear Custom Kydex. It's the Essie Humless, and this is the RB3 here, which is, again, a great knife. And then I put one of the SE6 pouches with a survival tinner. He put it together for me right there. So I've got some survival gear there, and I've got a small knife and a large knife. Got like in a kind of a deep green and a brown as well. And then on the back, there's the attachment point so I can hang that on my belt. So yeah, number one for me, the Essie Humless. All right, let me roll in some footage here as I wrap up so you can see the knives kind of displayed side by side. These are all great knives. If you got any of these, you'd be very happy. I'm convinced of that, especially for survival scenarios in the Northeast where I live. These things just all do a great job. I did have to pick a favorite. That's why I picked the Essie Humless. And I'll come back probably, you know, in a couple years and revisit this and see if there are new knives that I like. That, you know, if maybe I'd swap out one of these. I'd swap out a couple. We'll see how it goes. But at this point, these guys are all getting double thumbs up from Everyday Tactical Vids, again, as well as the companies that stand behind these knives and that make. All right, now I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. Let me know what you think about these actual knives or cutting tools, and then also what is your favorite survival knife that you have out there, and tell me why as well. Don't just tell me the name of it, but give me some reasons why you've chosen that particular knife that you've chosen as your favorite survival knife. Thanks as always for checking out the videos here on YouTube. Please subscribe to Everyday Tactical Vids if you haven't done so already. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check us out on Instagram, Tumblr, and Vero as well. More videos coming soon. Take care.